Okay, I am going to continue on to chapter 14 in The Devil in Massachusetts. This title is called Blood to Drink. That's the title of the chapter. Fortunately for the future of the church in New England, not all ministers showed themselves as hard of heart to the defendants in the witchcraft as did Noyes in Paris. There were more compassionate men. One of them was the Reverend Samuel Willard of the Old South Church of Boston, the member of the Conference of Ministers consulted by the judges. He had been one of the most responsible for the recommendation of exquisite caution in handling the whole program, and would indeed, would indeed, left to himself, have ruled out spectral evidence altogether, whether or not he attended to the trial of Rebecca Nurse and heard the abortive acquittal, whether or not he made any public remarks on that occasion. He drew himself somehow to the attention of the afflicted girls. For one of these created a scandal by crying out on him. Too many the accusations must have seemed not implausible. Willard had not always been popular with his fellow ministers in Boston. Strict as he professed himself in doctrinal matters, he had sometimes given offense by admitting to his church applicants rejected by other congregations. In the present crisis, his attitude seemed perilously close to that of Cotton Mather, called a Sadducee. True, he had never gone so far as to deny the existence of witches, but he carried his distrust in spectral evidence to the point where it admitted to almost the same thing. Were his ideas put in practice, there would and could be no successful prosecution. Back in 1671, he had been instrumental in preventing persecution on that charge when 16-year-old Elizabeth Knapp of his parish of Groton had several hysterical fits in which he accused not only a very sincere but holy woman, but reviled her own pastor, Mr. Willard. Owing to his intervention, the accused woman had never come to cross-examination before the magistrates. Instead, he had brought her to the girl himself and allowed her to reason and pray with her accuser. Wow. Under these circumstances, the latter began to contradict herself, and finally, coming out of her possession, withdrew her accusation. Other pastors had done something similar from time to time, notably John Hill of Beverly, but where the latter now implied that his early lenience had been a dangerous error, Willard did not, in spite of the evidence of his own eyes, in spite of the virtual engulfing of Massachusetts by the uncontrolled forces of diabolism, Willard believed that his way had been the right way. So did everyone else. Now, it doesn't say that, but I'm just saying so did everyone else because every single pastor seems to know what to do, and it always ends in people dying. Um, well, not always, but most of the time in this book it has. Now witchcraft had invaded his parish again. John Alden, being of his congregation, and Willard was giving close to critical attention to the matter of the trials. He had been in charge. He would not for a moment have stood such had stood such a one as Rebecca Nurse before the bar to answer questions which were in their very nature unanswerable. In effect, it was as if the judges were saying to the prisoner, "What was your spectral shape during the night of Wednesday last? Did it not lie within human power to reply to such a question?" Sorry, it did not lie within human power to reply to such a question, for the frame of the reference was beyond and above the world of uh, demonstrable facts. Instead of bed eviling uh, a little old woman, he would have taken her side with her principal accuser and put them and would have let accused and accuser talk it over. To a realistic eye, the most resting quality of young Anne was her impressionability, withdrawn from the atmosphere of malignant spite and of historical devotion to lost causes that prevailed in her home, to the loving kindness and understanding of a good old woman who knew from large experience how the storms of overcoming puberty may beset and torment a little girl who knew what miraculous cure God might not have wrought. This approach had been tried recently with another who stood trial with Rebecca Nurse, Elizabeth Howe of Topsfield. Goody, Howe's chief accuser, were members of the Purley family of Ipswich, who claimed a 10-year-old daughter was being afflicted by her. On one day, the Reverend Samuel Phillips had a colleague named Payson of Raleigh undertook a test in a manner prescribed by Willard. They brought Goody Howe to the child just as she was coming out of a fit, and remained on hand during the interview. "Did I hurt you?" asked Goody Howe, taking the child's hand. "No, never," said the girl, and reflecting, she said, "If I did complain of you in my fits, I knew not that I did so." The interview took place outdoors. A young brother listened from the window. Goody Howe's a witch," he called. "She's a witch!" But the child, her hand in Elizabeth's, smiled up at her confidently and said nothing. The ministers, convinced that the witchcraft was no more than name-calling incredential to an ordinary neighborhood unpleasantness, made a formal disposition of their observations to present as testimony of Elizabeth Howe. So, and not otherwise, would Willard have worked with witches. His views were well known and were a thorn in the side of some of the afflicted and their advisors. They multiplied the difficulty of convicting such a criminal as Rebecca Nurse. So one of the girls cried out on him in court, and common people quivered and thrilled at the audacity of the accusation. Now indeed were the mountains laid low, but not this mountain. Willard was no obscure country person like Burroughs, one of the most distinguished figures in Boston. He had been acting president of Harvard in the absence of increased matter. Every judge on the bench knew that the charge was preposterous and indecent, and unlike the friends of Rebecca Nurse and Elizabeth Howe, they were in a position to enforce their conviction. "There will be no more of that. You are mistaken," one of them said in effect, and another kindly added that the girl had doubtless confused the minister with his namesake, Constable Willard, who lay in jail awaiting trial. This semantic explanation satisfied everyone, and the girl subsided, and the other girls did not, however, subside for long. Their demons, heady with success, were acquiring a taste for bandying the names of the great. The judges had not heard the last of improbable accusations, and since they came up unexpectedly, the public could not be prevented from hearing them too. They were to become a source of serious embarrassment. On trial with Rebecca Nurse on 29 June, and the days following were Elizabeth Howe, Sarah Good, Sarah Wilde, and Susanna Martin. Goody Howe, like Bridget Bishop, was a victim of long-standing gossip connecting her with witchcraft. Because of such talk, she had been denied membership in the Ipswich Church, and even a friend who had defended her as a precious saint, saying that though she be condemned before men, she is justified before God, recanting after a revelatory dream, and proclaimed her a witch as loudly as any. Aside from such talk, there was nothing remarkable about the reported conduct of Goody Howe. Her two daughters and her blind husband were devoted to her, and she had many friends, among them a venerated deacon, Ingersoll of Salem Village, who were willing to testify to her good character. To such testimony was added that of the minister of Rowley, I think, who had gone out of their way to trace and expose the source of the gossip about her. Such testimony, based on the conduct of the accused in the visible world, could not, in the nature of things, be any relevance to what was the real crux of the matter: her activities in an invisible world. As usual, the friends of the witch were defeated by the fact that accusation and defense were conducted on two planes with no possible point of contact. They were, in the phrase of the latter-day philosopher, trying to set up the polar bear against the whale. It couldn't be done. Elizabeth Howe was convicted and sentenced. No one seemed likely to come to the defense of Sarah Good, yet unexpectedly someone did. During the trial, one of the girls accused of attacking her with a knife and produced a fragment of the blade as proof. Most of the spectators clucked their tongues with sympathy for the girl. Is that what that means? But one young man straightened up and looked hard at the evidence. He recognized the blade. It had broken off his own knife the day before, and the accuser had been present at the time. He got right up in meeting, asked to see the blade, and pulled out his own knife, demonstrated that it was an exact fit. The girl, shrinking from the cold eyes of Stalton, dared not to deny his story. She was, however, allowed to go on with hers. The judge merely told her to confine herself to the facts and to let her go on. The vigilance of the young man did not save Sarah Good. She too was sentenced. She went back to her prison, sucked on her pipe, and mumbled to herself until the day should come. It was my commandments, I say, my commandments, I hope. Sarah Wilde was a farmer wife with a strong sense of property rights. If people borrowed a scythe without her approval, she was capable of flying out at them and then sending a demon to plague them by overturning their hay wagons. Or at least some of her neighbors so reported. Others testified in quite the contrary direction. The reports of the first harmonized better with the versions of the girls, and the present party line of theocracy, and the jury in any case was taking no more chances with acquittals. Sarah Wilde was condemned to death. Damn. Susan Martin was every inch a witch, bright of eyes, salty of tongue, and a central figure of every marvelous event that had happened in Amesbury for going on 3 decades. She had established herself as a community witch as far back as 1669, when she had been presented at court for bewitching a neighbor, though not, as it happened, put on trial. Since then, the wishful folk spirit of Essex County denied its natural outlet, and Robin Goodfellows and in fiddling and dancing around the maypole had focused itself on the neat bird-like figure of Suzanne Martin, who made her something of a Paula Bunyan among witches. She had set a tone for her prosecution in early May when she came for her examination. An active body, she came in flesh and invigorated from the long ride up from Amesbury, and matrons looking over her dress could not see a pen out of place. No flashy dresser like Bridget Bishop. There was a timelessness about Susanna which was somehow even more arresting. She wore a simple hood and scarf with an air, and carried herself pertly. She had emerged unscathed from this situation once before. She had been called a witch for so long that she had come to relish the distinction. So it happened that when the bewitched girls were brought in and went into their angler antics before her, she emitted a sound seldom heard in this grave court. She laughed out loud. "Well, may I laugh at such folly?" she said with the magistrates reproved her. What do you think, Alice? What do you think, Alice Thumb?" they asked. Susanna shrugged. "I don't desire to spend my judgment on it. Don't you think they are bewitched?" "No, I don't think they are." The being pressed further, the woman insinuated, "If they are dealing with the black arts, you may know as well as I." She let her hand be guided to the girls, that her devil might be plucked from them, but was more diverted than impressed by the results of this exercise. Listening to the recital of her spectral misdeeds. However, she did not make one serious comment. He that appeared in the shape of Samuel, a glorified saint, may appear in anyone's shape. No good Puritan searching for the Bible of light on the witchcraft had missed the episode of the Witch of Endor, who had lawlessly caused the shape of Samuel to appear before the lawlessly inquiring Saul. The implications of the episode were far from clear. Some claimed that it was here that the Bible set a seal of approval upon spectral evidence. Others that it demonstrated the opposite. Susanna remarked was disregarded in court, but her reasoning would not be forgotten. At the trial, the judges knew better than to give rein to the tart tongue and irreverent wit of this witch. Instead, they heard what her neighbors had to say about her, a recital in short in the Wonder Tales of Amesbury, Massachusetts. There was a tale of the enchanted oxen of Salisbury, Beach. 14 head at John Allen had put out to fatten on the salt grass, had one day gone goaded by the devil into swarming to Plum Island. When Allen traced them there and tried to round them up, the oxen ran from him with a violence and wholly diabolic, and plunging into the water, swam straight out to sea. Only one of the infatuated beasts came to its senses in time to turn back, and even he, reaching the shore, crashed past his pursuers and galloped through the marshes of Newbury Town. This one alone, captured the woods a day or so later, was saved, though soon the tides began to wash the bodies and the others upon the shore. Faced so ruinous a disaster, a good Puritan searches his conscience to see what sin unrepented of God is punishing for him. Allen may have started such a good search, but he was interrupted by a memory ringing in his ears like a spiteful echo of the shrill voice of Susan Martin. Your oxen will never do you much service. It came back to him now. Just before he turned his oxen out to grass, he had refused to hitch his ox cart to haul her some staves, and in those words had Susanna mocked him. Dost thou threaten me, thou witch? I'll throw these into the brook. He had shouted, but Susanna had nimbly ran across the bridge out of his way. Who but Susanna had sent the devil into his castle? There was a tale of the phantom puppies. Susanna owned these puppies. At first, they existed on a physical level. Her bitch had produced a likely litter, and John Kimball had contracted to buy one. But when he came, Susanna would not let him have his choice, and was wroth when he had refused to buy at all. I'll give you puppies enough, she cried after him, and indeed she did. It began towards sundown with a little black cloud in the northwest. Kimball saw it when he came out of his wood lot with his axe over his shoulder, and at the same moment found himself in the grip of the power that made his feet unsteady. Though a broad, straight cartway laid before him, he began to wave from side to side, lurching into stumps, tripping, and sometimes falling headlong, axe and all. When finally he came out to the road near the meeting house, he found a puppy waiting for him. At least it was a thing. At least it was a thing like a puppy, small, dark, and devilish playful. It nipped at his heels, ran back and forth between his feet. Kimball took it for a real enough puppy until he swung his axe at it. Then the queer thing happened, and the thing leaped aside and vanished into the ground. Kimball stared about him, rubbed his eyes, and stumbled on. Uncanny or not, at least he was rid of puppies. But he was not. Up the shadowy road waited another thing, a larger puppy, black as coal and vicious. It sprang for his throat, his belly, and darting behind him, made for his shoulders. Swinging his axe had no impression on it at all. In the name of Jesus Christ, avoid, cried Kimball. At last, and lo, the thing was gone. He was panting when he got to his kitchen, but took care to say no word to his wife. It might scare her. Besides, there is no knowing what a woman's inconsequence will suggest. It is common enough for maids to bring beer and a pailful to men working on field and woodlot. His wife might say that he had refreshed himself once too often. His reticence made it the more remarkable that the story was all over town next day. People grinned at him knowingly and asked for the puppies. How he demanded did they know? And he traced the gossip to Susanna Martin, who could have had only one way of knowing. She herself had sent her devils in the form of puppies to torment him. Only these people can see puppies as a bad thing. There was the legend of Susanna walking a dry shroud over the waterways. In wicked weather, she had once taken a notion to call on Sarah Atkinson in Newbury, going on foot all the way. She entered the kitchen neat as ever. Even the soles of her feet were dry. I'd be wet to my knees if I come so far, said Sarah. I scorn to have the drabbled tale, said Susanna tartly. And the rhetoric which surrounded somehow like a comment on Sarah's general appearance and her housekeeping had rankled. It rankled so much that when Susanna was taken in the Witchcraft, Sarah Atkinson's went to the magistrate to enter the incident in the records. Other wonder tales concern the shapes assumed by the proton Susanna. Once she showed as a marvelous light about the bigness of a half bushel to John Pressy in an open field at night. Once a good wife saw her melt into empty space and then materialize again from the birds who pecked and pinched. Once she came at night to Robin Dow's as a cat and was like to kill him before he had the presence of mind to exorcise her by saying, "Avoid thou she devil, in the name of God and Father, the Son of the Holy Ghost, avoid." Like Bridget Bishop, she was found a molesting honest men in her bedchambers. At night would come a scrabbling at the window, and there was Susanna hopping down from the still and boldly getting into bed. One man, Joseph, rang. She had enslaved. She and her fellows used to snatch him through the air and drag him to witch meetings. For more than 2 years they had struck him dumb, so that he returned from feasting and dining in unknown places. He could report his adventures only by signs. Now his voice had, by grace of God, returned. He used it to make a damnifying disposition on Susanna's secret social life. An attentive listener might note that in the bulk of Susanna's exploits there was no great harm done. Her familiar could not have ranked no higher than a common poltergeist and prankish fellow, related no doubt to Robin Goodfellow, but no murderer. In all of 3 decades, no death and had been laid to her door except for John Allen's oxen. There could be no doubt, however, that she was an unpleasant neighbor, a dangerous person to cross, and besides, she had lightly practiced her arts on the girls of Salem. The judges condemned her with the rest, and if there were any in Amesbury who deplored the loss of their most picturesque character, they did not put their sentiments on record. On Tuesday, 19 July, came the decisive event which so many in Massachusetts have been praying: a mass execution of witches. 5 were hung on Gallows Hill, all women, the 5 whose trials had begun in late June: Rebecca Nurse, Goody Good, Elizabeth Howe, Sarah Wilde, Susanna Martin. The ceremony was carried out decently with one discordant note. That was the snubbing Sarah Good gave the good no yes when he made one last appeal to her to save her immortal soul by confessing. He reminded her that she well knew she was a witch. "You are a liar," said Sarah. "I am no more a witch than you are a wizard. If you take my life away, God will give you blood to drink." They took her life away, and No Yes did have blood to drink. Years later, when he was dying of a hemorrhage, though not so many years later that Sarah's words were not thought of, the bodies of the witches were thrust into shallow graves, and the crevice of Gallows Hill, outchopping of Fellsite, but the body of Rebecca did not remain there. Her children buried their time, or so the story goes, and at night when the crowds and the executioners had gone home again, they gathered up the body of their mother and took it home. Just where they laid it none can know, for this was a secret thing, and not even Paris, whose parsonage was not a quarter of a mile up the road, past the grove where the nurses buried their dead, must see that a new grave had been opened, and prayers said. This was the hour and the power of darkness when the son could not say where he had buried his mother. Damn. Yet the hour would pass under the trees, and granite shaft would one day be raised to Rebecca, and beside it another honoring the names of the neighbors who spoke up of her in the day when it was dangerous to speak. But now in July 1692, there were no shafts. There was only a secret grave across the the fertile. But this year half neglected fields, there were the children of Rebecca silently going their way. Not even yet was their cup of sorrow full. Their mother's sister, Mary Etsy, and Sarah Cloyce still lay in the hands of what Carrie had called unmerciful men. Yet the whole story had not been told. Not for nothing had Elizabeth Proctor said to little Abigail, "There is another judgment, dear child."